Welcome to Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, the founder and CEO of Enter the Arena. I'm a serial entrepreneur and an expert in raising investment and business growth. Our mission at Enter the Arena is to empower female founders to fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business with investment expertise and business coaching. Here we share the stories of inspirational female founders who've raised investment to inspire you to do the same. You'll hear their honest accounts of what it was really like to secure funding, the highs, the lows, and the challenges they experienced on the journey. And along the way, we'll discuss top tips for how you can be successful too. Today we're talking about dry cleaning with a female founder that is really shaking up this very, very male-dominated industry. So think about it. How many times have you been to either drop off or pick up your dry cleaning only to find that the store is closed? And it's incredibly frustrating. Well, Vicky, along with her dry cleaning concept, Peter's Cleaners, is out to solve this problem by launching pods and lockers that will enable customers to drop off and collect their items whenever they want in locations that are convenient for them. Now, Peter's Cleaners is currently a regional player in the Peterborough area, but Vicky's got big plans to roll the business out across the UK. They already have the highest Trustpilot rating of any dry cleaner in the UK. So I'm joined today by Vicky Whiter, the CEO, along with her commercial director, Clare Gill, who has been instrumental in helping with her crowdfund. They recently raised £450,000 of investment for the business at a £2 million valuation to help them realise their growth ambitions. So let's meet Vicky and Clare and find out more about their story, how they raised the money and what they learned along the way. So welcome, Vicky and Clare. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking us on.
So, Vicky, I've got to ask this question because it's an unusual one. What on earth made you want to go into dry cleaning?
Well, Julia, it's a question I've asked myself many a time over the last few years, especially during the tough times. My original reason for looking at dry cleaning was a change of my lifestyle. So I was commuting to London, I was flying around the world, and I had a young daughter and I wanted to see more of her. So I made the decision to leave the big smoke and look at a smaller local regional business. At the time, I was pretty burnt out, and I thought working behind a counter in a shop would be quite good fun and would see me through my daughter's junior school years. Much to the amusement of my friends, who all said, no, you're going to shake up that industry. And sure enough, within about 18 months, I started feeling a little twitchy and started thinking about my own experiences as a customer of dry cleaning who was on an early train, traveling a lot, and they never seemed to be open where and when I needed them to be. So started applying myself really to solving that issue.
Wow. And so what were you doing in the city then before you decided to quit everything and do something different?
I was working for a business focused at legal services. So we did the official transcripts and all kind of documents, digitizing documents for litigation. And we also did due diligence platforms, online due diligence platforms. And I was the business development director.
Okay. So experience in business development, but new to the world of entrepreneurship, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was perfectly placed. I knew nothing about running a business. I knew nothing about retail. I'd never done B2C. And I knew absolutely nothing about dry cleaning. So, yeah,
That's
sometimes
brilliant.
ignorance is bliss.
That's right. And actually that enables you to ask all those questions that people who are already in the industry just don't ask, do they? They take it for granted.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think one of the things that frustrates me when I look at people that are recruiting is when they say must have industry experience, because to me, that's just blinkers. Bring someone new in that looks at things in a new way and could bring a new perspective. I mean, neither Claire nor I had any experience of dry cleaning except using them.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you have great insights as a consumer, which is a great place to start. So So tell me about Peter's Dry Cleaning. So did you start this business yourself? Like what? Tell me the beginning story of your venture.
The business was started in 1963 by Peter and his son Peter, hence the fact the apostrophe is after the S, which confuses most people. They kept it in the family until 2016, when the two sons decided that they were pretty much focused on other things, and dry cleaning was a tough business to be in. So they were going to close it down. And what I liked about it was that it had what appealed to me and frightened me, I think it's fair to say, is the longevity of the staff, and the customer base. They were the best kept secret in town that provided extremely good dry cleaning services, just not enough people knew about them.
It's very interesting, actually. I think many people who've got desires and ambition to build and grow a business, they think about starting it from scratch, and not enough people think about actually taking on an existing business and looking at how you can really turn that around and make something of it. It's very interesting. Where did you find Peter's Cleaners? How did you find the opportunity?
In a pub. So it was
Where
actually,
all the best things start, Vicky. All the best things start in a pub.
it's got to be a pub or a golf course, isn't it? Actually, the guy that owns it lives in the next village and was chatting to my dad one night in the pub and said, "Oh, I think, I've had enough now and I'm going to close it." My dad rang me up and said, "Oh, this might work.
It's really
Come and have a look."
interesting. Really interesting. Okay, but something you just said a minute ago, which really was interesting to me, was they're getting out because it's a really tough business. So, what was your thinking at the time in terms of I can take on this tough business and do something with it? What was your idea?
My idea was really to drive sales. So I knew the cleaning was good. I knew the reputation for the cleaning was good. We had people, second, third generations in families coming, but not enough people knew about it. So as people left the region or died, which was literally the only reason people stopped being clients, no new clients were coming on. And it was just an exhausted, tired business. In fact, the marketing was so bad that I stood outside the shop and polled people, asking them if they knew what it did. And I think out of 100 people I polled, only 30 people actually realized it was a dry cleaners. One
Wow.
guy thought it was a money laundering center. I did say it was laundering, but of a different kind.
So there's an opportunity there for you to grow the business through simply doing better marketing and breathing some life into this old and tired business. But did you at that point think that this could be a very scalable business, or did that come
No,
later?
no, that wasn't the thought at all at that stage. So my plan at that stage was to run it as efficiently as I could, get more local people knowing about it and using it, and to turn it into profit to provide some form of an income for me.
Okay. So what was the next stage on the journey then, once you've kind of achieved that first ambition?
Well, then I started getting a bit twitchy and started thinking, oh, actually, the more I learn about this industry, the more fascinating it is. People want it, but nobody was making any money at the time. As I was looking at it, even Johnson's, which was the largest aggregator, was losing money. And so when there's a demand for something, it's a fascinating conundrum as to why everybody is losing money. So it just started really interesting me from that perspective. And the more I looked at it, the more I came to the conclusion that the model of taking into a shop, which is expensive and where there are people, and then having a van driving around, which is expensive and where there are people, and then having people in a cleaning hub, where again it's people, it's a very people heavy industry. And as minimum wage was being driven up and it's gone up incredibly fast in the last 7 years, then all new profitability that was being pumped in was just being eroded. So there had to be a way of taking people out of the model to reduce the cost basis.
Okay. And your solution to that is using the lockers?
Replacing, yes. So essentially expanding through people-less shops.
Okay.
So yes, that was the initial thinking. I didn't want to take people out of the cleaning process because, unlike commercial laundries where 100 pillowcases are exactly the same, with clothes, every item is different. It's individual. We're not cleaning uniforms. We're cleaning people's personal items. So taking people out of the cleaning process would just erode the quality of the clean. And I wanted to be quality. I've always, every brand I've worked with in the service sector has been about quality.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I'm absolutely passionate about that.
Yeah, that's that service proposition is essential, isn't it? Okay, so you've got this idea, this concept. So then what? What were your next steps in terms of thinking about how to execute that? And were you thinking then about fundraising at that point? Is that what lit the fire?
No, at that point I was self-funding. I had some savings from, the years I'd worked in the city, and I spoke to my husband and we put in a chunk of money, and I went at this the first stage was I went to the station and said, hey, do you think your commuters might like a dry cleaners that they can drop off at 6:20 in the morning and pick up at 8 o'clock at night? And they said yes. So they allowed me to actually do some polling on the station platform. And the reaction I got was absolutely phenomenal, especially from women. It was very interesting that it was women that were really like, yes, this would be brilliant. So I knew the demand was there. I knew I couldn't afford to man a shop at 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. So it had to be a people-less shop. And it was actually one of my staff who alerted me to something that was happening in Australia. And so I rang them and they said that they were still working on the concept. And so after sort of doing some research, really the way to do it was to build something myself, which is what I did, with the aim of putting it in at Peterborough Station as a trial, just to see what would happen.
But tell us how does it work then? I'm coming to the station with my dry cleaning. What do I do? Is there an app? Is it a padlock?
So essentially you sign up through an app, you put we're just actually changing this bit at the moment, but you will put your order in, you pay, that generates a QR code, and that QR code then unlocks the pod so that you can drop your bag in. We take it away, clean it, press it, reload it. You'll get a message saying that it's ready to pick up. The QR code is then scanned and then it delivers it back to you.
How fabulous. That's amazing. So the first pods and the investment that you needed to make in the physical, products and putting them in the stations, was that something that you funded yourself, Vicky?
Yes.
Yeah. And did that give you enough evidence that this could work as a solution?
No, and largely because of timing. So my first pod opened 3 months before lockdown.
Brilliant.
Couldn't write it.
I mean, in some ways, what comes to mind is how brilliant, because it's a no-touch service. So in terms of all of that kind of side of spreading the virus, sounds great, but of course nobody's going to work.
Nobody's going to work, nobody's using trains, nobody's wearing suits, nobody's going to weddings. Yeah, nobody's going out.
Okay, so what did you do then through that period of lockdown?
Well, that was tough because dry cleaners were considered essential businesses, so our access to funding was far less than other retailers. Yet we had to continue operating when demand for services had dropped by 50%. So it was a very, very tough time. But I truly believed in the concept. I really thought I was onto something. And the decision was then kind of go big or go home, really. So my original plan had always been to get one or two of these, spend some time building a hub and spoke model, and then see where I could take it. When the lockdown happened, from that point, it was the decision to raise money. So it had to be a much more structured approach with a really tight business plan, with a 5-year forecast. So it really made me think about what I was doing and what I wanted to get out of it. One of the first things I read, which I thought was really interesting when you go out and you build a business, is to know what you're aiming for, so you know when to get out, which sounds a strange thing to say, that one of the first decisions you have to make is knowing when you want to get out. But if you do want to retire and you do want an exit, you have to understand how much is enough. So my husband and I spent a lot of time looking at how much is enough and what we wanted out of this and what we were willing to commit ourselves. And that was really the start of the fundraising journey.
I mean, that is music to my ears, Vicky. And I think really great advice for any founder listening to this is about really thinking about where you want to get to, what that exit looks like, and what it's going to take to get there. I think so many founders build businesses because they're solving a problem and they kind of get started with it, but not enough people actually really look at the strategic planning that around where it's going to go. And if you then work backwards, it's much easier, isn't it, to see what funding you might need to get there. So, okay, so you've done that work and you've looked at how much funding you might need. What was your thinking at that stage about how you would go out and raise that funding? What kind of funding sources you would consider?
The first thing I did is approach friends and family. And I was lucky to get a lead investor who was actually my old boss from work. So she was happy to be my lead investor. And then some other friends and family came in. So before I even thought about going down looking for funding elsewhere, I had 30% of the money raised. And I think if you can do that, I think that's a really good starting point, because it shows that you've got commitment from people that know you. And I think what investors, that I heard it time and time again, investors invest in people. You can have a great concept, but if you've got an average person, it's unlikely to work. You can have an average concept, but if you have a great person, it stands a really good chance of working. So if, for somebody that's thinking of going out, having friends and family that are willing to commit to you because they think you're a great person is a good first message for those investors.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they trust you. They understand your skills and experience. It's a great way to start, is to go out to your own network. At this point, let me bring Clare into the conversation, because Clare, your role in the business is a more commercial and marketing one, isn't it?
Yep, that's right. So I supported Vicky since 2021 as marketing director of Peters. And so, have been managing everything from sort of communications, the crowdfund, the brand, and any kind of tone of voice that sits inside, outside, and the strategy that sits behind all of that.
Okay, brilliant. So let's talk about how you two met and this crowdfunding piece. So you've got some initial investment, 30% of what you want to raise, a lead investor. Vicky, what made you think about doing crowdfunding, and how did that then lead you to find Clare and start working with Clare?
The first thing I did was actually approach a business angel network, and I did a presentation to them, and I found it incredibly hard because it was over Zoom. And I come from a business and sales background. I'm perfectly happy to stand in front of the people in a room and do a presentation. I spoke at conferences. I love face to face. I found the whole Zoom thing, because it was so early on in the Zoom process, we were all new to it, very stinted and very difficult to present over. So I knew that I needed to look for a different approach because of the situation that I was in. In fact, a funny story is the first presentation I did to a potential investor, my daughter had been on Zoom and had actually drawn in eyebrows and moustache and red lips. And when I went on Zoom to talk to this investor, I was sitting there with big eyebrows, red lips, and a moustache.
Oh my God, I love that. What a great icebreaker, though. I mean,
I'll send you the photo.
That's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, God, Zoom. We're doing this interview over Zoom, so I shouldn't be too down on it. But actually, it is really difficult to get that kind of magic connection, isn't it, over Zoom? And
it really is.
We can do a lot. I mean, I think it can be very, very helpful for founders that are on that investment campaign to have initial meetings on Zoom. But in terms of really building that rapport and relationship, there's nothing beats face-to-face, does it?
No, and it's very hard to be passionate when you're told you can't move your hands, you can't walk around, you've got to keep your face. And so I felt it very unnatural, but I got some really positive feedback. And I guess this is my sort of tip number 2 is listen to feedback. Your idea should always evolve. Investors don't have to invest. It's a choice if they want to invest, and it's competition. You're in competition with other people. So if you're not willing to listen to these people who are incredibly bright and who have seen it all before and take their advice and go and revise your business plan and your business model, then, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. So I got some very interesting feedback. The two that were, one is just dry cleaning, not very exciting, not really sure how you're going to pitch that one. And the other was around, if you want to go growth with this model, you should probably look at franchising. And that was something I hadn't looked at. So I went away, I started listening to audiobooks and doing a ton of research and speaking to people about franchising, and made the decision that I needed somebody to really bring my very dull navy blue Peters Cleaners brand stuck in the 1980s to life. So I networked in with a few marketing groups on LinkedIn and put out a brief, and Claire approached me. Okay. So that's how we met. And at the time, what was interesting is Claire lived down on the south coast in Dorset. I'm up in Cambridgeshire, but I guess by that point, who cares? That was one thing that Zoom had done for us, was it didn't really matter. So it gave me a much bigger scope and to look for the right person, a much bigger geographic area to look for the right person.
Julia here. I hope you are enjoying this podcast episode. So let's just take a short break, because I'd really like to let you know about the Fundraising Academy for female founders that I run. Now, if you're looking to raise investment and you'd like the very best training and support as you go through the journey, then I would love to help you. Because joining the program is going to empower you with the strategy, skills, and support you need for success with your raise. From ensuring you have an investable company, preparing your pitch assets like your pitch deck and financials, knowing exactly how to reach out to the right investors, how to have great conversations with them that lead to them investing in you. And you're going to get all the tools and templates you need, and check-ins every week. And alongside all of that, we support you with your mindset and your confidence, which is so important when you're fundraising. You'll get to meet your peers who are going through the same process too, and you'll also have online support whenever you need it. You can join group coaching sessions, and you can also get one-to-one time with me too. We have helped dozens of amazing women raise investment through our program, and we'd love to help you too. So if you'd like more information on the Fundraising Academy for female founders, then just go to enterthearena.co.uk and we'll see you there. And I, Claire, it's interesting. I mean, you know, as a marketeer, you've got this brand and Peter's Cleaners, and you've got to think, like, how can we make this sexy and exciting to the market and to investors? What were your thoughts at the time? And I'm really interested to know, like, did you ever think about sort of the name of the business and whether to change it? I mean, I love it, but I'm just intrigued.
It's a good question, hey.
You're opening up an old wound.
Right.
Oh dear, should we not go down that rabbit hole?
No, it's fine.
No, it's fine.
My history is I've spent many years working B2C and big brands, so BMW, Morrison's head office, and I had a young child. I was just coming to the end of my maternity leave, and I was really conflicted about what I wanted to do with my future. And I really had this drive and this passion to go and do something with an SME and do something on my own. So kind of took this leap from working in big corporates and decided to go it on my own. And so trawling through LinkedIn, looking for something that caught my attention that was a little bit different. I'd had some experience in Morrison's working on some of the different businesses that sit within that group. And they call it popular and useful services, and some of that kind of tied into the advertisement for a role that I'd seen Vicky put out there. And there was something about the way it was written that really caught my attention. And I thought, do you know what, whoever's written this, I'd like to speak to them, or just an hour, just to pick their brain. So I applied, and next minute Vicky pops into my inbox and asked me to have a call. And sometimes these things happen in life where you meet someone and instantly there's a connection, and you feel like, I can learn from this person, they're going to be a great inspiration for me. And that's ultimately what happened in that hour. It was a meeting of minds, and we felt very passionate quite quickly about working together on this project. When we think about Peter's Cleaners and the brand and what existed of it at the point when I sort of joined forces with Vicky, you're right. There was lots of conversation about, at this point in time, what do we do, and what's the objectives right here and now to get what we need, and then what's the objectives for the future. Right at the point that I joined, we knew we needed to raise some money to get Vicky what she wanted, and to really start pushing on with the growth strategy we had with the pods. So really what we needed to do was set a look and feel, set a brand, and really add some creative flair to the heritage that existed behind Peter's Cleaners. And you have lots of different ways that you come up with names for companies, but there is value in having a heritage name. You know, this company is steeped in heritage, and there's a really nice story that sits behind it. So we stuck with the name. And built a campaign line that was all about grabbing the attention. We moved the focus away from the name, and we moved the focus into the taglines. I spent a bit of time really thinking about the feedback Vicky had received so far, which was around, how are you going to make this sexy, and how are you going to get people's attention? And I also started to bring in some of my retail experience of, you know, how do you stop people in their tracks, busy people who are time poor, and how do you, you know, get them to buy things off the shelves? You know, with all of those things combined, that's where it brought about this tagline around drop your trousers. It's cheeky.
It still makes me laugh.
I love it.
And it brings to life really the concept of what we're asking people to do. We came up with some really bold ideas around how we might activate that campaign line. Some of them went in the might get us press we're not comfortable with. We'll park that idea for the moment. And some of them we did bring to life in quite a fun way. And it did get people's attention, and it got people laughing. And that's one of the taglines that we have really played on and continue to play on over the years. We've supplemented other taglines that are cheeky and fun, like come and talk dirty to us, and things like that. So I think we made dry cleaning sexy.
I love it. I mean, who'd have thought that you could make it sexy? And so, you know, were investors finding it sexy then? You'd done this thinking around the rebrand and the fresh look and feel and the taglines. Did that start to make an impact for you in the conversations with investors?
Yeah, it definitely the whole crowdfunding journey made us really focus on the brand, because essentially it's a big marketing exercise. So, if you haven't got consistency across your brand, if you haven't got clear messaging, then, people will look on your LinkedIn, they will look on your Facebook, they will look at your website, they will look at, your crowdfunding page. And if it isn't consistent and if it doesn't look really professional, you're up there with other brands. And if they've done it better, who as an investor are you going to put your money in?
That's right.
Because
crowdfunding, they want to back a winner, don't they? They want to back a category leader, someone who's going to really shake things up.
Yeah. And so if you look a bit cheap and tacky, you're not going to look like those people that are going to shake it up. So we had to there was a lot of work went into that. But I think it really came into its own when we came out of lockdown, and I then had, we'd raised the vast majority of the funds, but I still had some more that I wanted to raise. And I went to a presentation of a group of business angels, and by this point it had opened up and I could go and do a face-to-face presentation in a room. And to be able to stand up there and say, so we're dry cleaners, blah, 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 and we're asking the nation to drop their trousers. I mean, the place just burst out laughing, and from then on I knew I had them. So it was very interesting the way that over the year, because it took us a year to raise the money. I think this is another thing I would say to people is think early, because if you're thinking about raising money when you're running out of money, it's too late, because you need to fund that year. Otherwise, you're going to give away your business for nothing. They will beat you down in value. So we had enough money to sort of fund through that year and invest in it and in the raising of the money. But I know companies that haven't actually closed funding because they started raising it too late, at the point that they've only got 3 months cash flow left.
Yeah, it's very, very common. And I see this a lot, particularly with female founders. And a lot of that is around a fear of fundraising, a fear of what it's going to involve, that it's going to be a time sucker, that investors are going to come in and take control of their business. A lot of women, I think, feel quite intimidated by the very male-dominated investment world, and sort of put it off until they absolutely have to do it. But as you say, Vicky, that's too late. You have to plan ahead.
Well, at the point that you do that, you're letting them dominate you, because they've got control. So if you want to keep control of it, you've got to be the person that's ahead of the game and organized. And I don't think it's different for female investors than any investor. It's a terrifying experience, and the only way you raise money is by being the best.
Yeah.
And that is, what Claire and I learned through going through the process was how to refine and improve, refine and improve, refine and improve, refine and improve. And eventually, when I turned up at this face-to-face, that was when we got our institutional investor. She approached me.
Okay.
So
and this was before you went out on the crowdfund, right?
No, this was after. So this was
okay.
Yeah. So we had friends and family as business angels, followed by some crowdfunding, followed by an institutional investor.
Okay.
And it was an interesting way around it, because the institutional investor that we have is absolutely fantastic. We don't even have anyone on our board.
Mm-hmm.
They think we're so capable that we're not their worry. So they're not trying to dominate us. They're not trying to look over our shoulder. They're not trying to tell us what to do. They're there if we need help and guidance and stuff. And they started with somebody on our board, and then they said, you know what, you're fine. We'll just send us reports and we'll come and see you when we need to. Yeah. So, that not all institutional investors are the sit on the board, you have to do it our way type, because that's why I didn't go for institutional investments initially. I didn't want somebody telling me what to do, and I didn't want to get caught into a time frame of being forced to exit because the fund was closing.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point that people need to be aware of, is those institutional investors are on a different often on a different trajectory in terms of the ROI they're looking for and the time frame to exit. How did you balance that with your institutional investors? Because with angel investors, it's often patient capital. Crowdfunding investors, again, there's not the expectation that you're going to give them that exit within 2-3 years. Where was your is it early stage VC that you have on board?
Yeah, and actually the fund that invested in me tends to invest in long term. So I'm talking about agriculture, chemicals, development of chemicals and things like that. So they usually don't see a return for around 15 years. So it's an open-ended fund. So that you're never under any time frame to exit because the fund is closing. So they're not in any hurry. They're happy to play the long game. So, there are institutional investors out there. It's like finding the right marketing person. It's finding the right partner and I was lucky they approached me, but I think, if you take I'm going to say something quite general here, but take your focus off London, look at more regional. Ours is a regional fund. We had to re-register our headquarters to make sure that we were compliant with their region, because part of our business was in their region and part wasn't. But regional, there are regional investment funds out there who are looking for local businesses and who are championing local businesses. And that's what we found.
Yeah, I think that's very wise. And I think we need more of that. I mean, actually something like 68% of high growth potential female founder-led businesses are not in Greater London. Yet actually a lot of the investment is concentrated here, and so much of the activity is in London. There is so much potential in the region. So the funds that are out there, I think they're going to understand your local area more. They're going to be potentially a bit more supportive because they want to get behind those local entrepreneurs. I'm glad you found someone.
Yeah, and they also, they're clued up on how to make grants work in that area. They can put you in touch with the people that you need to know to help you access funds from everywhere else as well, because they know their areas. So it for me, it's been a really positive experience. It was something that I wasn't looking for initially, but it has been an incredibly positive experience.
Excellent. So Claire, let's talk a bit about the crowdfunding and what was involved in that. I mean, as a marketeer, is that something you led on? Because as Vicky said, it's a marketing exercise, isn't it? More than anything.
Really, it is a marketing exercise.
Yeah.
It's not one I'd done before. I hadn't crowdfunded before, but I have a ream of advice for people.
What are your top tips?
Yeah, so one of the things you touched on is the time it takes, and I think that's certainly something I would advise people to think about. You can't go into crowdfunding and start asking your crowd for money if you haven't spent time warming them up beforehand. So part of the really interesting journey, once you decide you want to crowdfund, is to spend a few months really nurturing your crowd and telling them the why and the who, and giving them the storytelling behind the heart that sits in the undercurrent of your business. That's really important before you go and ask them to open their wallets. Otherwise, the two things, they don't fit the puzzle pieces there. So there was a big piece of work that existed before we went live with crowdfunding around telling stories on social, especially LinkedIn, going out to our customer base and also telling them that story via email comms, and even, right down to the fact that we were putting leaflets on people's dry cleaning clothes that were going back to them, so that we knew whatever age demographic that our customer base sat behind, we were getting the message out there about who we were. We then did a pre-run into crowdfunding, so getting people excited about this thing that was coming. That was really important, a kind of countdown of excitement. And we had customers coming into our stores saying, "Oh, I've seen this. I'm really excited. Are you excited that this is coming?" And that felt like a really positive momentum before we went live. The other thing I would say to people is you need to get lots of your ducks in a row before you go to crowdfund. So your website, it needs to look shit hot. You need it to look seamless. You need the journey to be great. You need that to tie in with your brand image across everything. So your socials need to align. The people who work for your business need LinkedIn profiles that are active. Everything needs to feel like the sphere of your brand fits together really nicely. What else? You need some money to film a video.
Yeah.
The best campaigns on these crowdfunding platforms have really beautifully done storytelling videos as to why, the crowd should invest. The best ones we saw were really professionally done, but we're told in a really authentic way. The kind of storytelling had like deep authenticity to it. It wasn't a commercial video that felt like a TV advert. It was something that felt like it was grounded in a good story. So like Vicky has mentioned around getting your story right, you've got to do that before you go live, because you've got to invest probably close to $3,000 on some good videography and editing to get your storytelling right. And that's
it's all about trust, isn't it? It's trust and confidence in you and the brand and your capabilities. But actually that spending something like $3,000 on a crowdfunding video, you can reuse those assets in lots of ways, can't you? So it's actually not just a one-time investment for your business. You can be doing a lot with that.
And there's slightly different audiences as well. So in that videography shoot, you need to think about how you want to chop and change that video piece. So what's your video for LinkedIn? What's your pre-tell story that gets people excited? And then what's your video that sits on your crowdfunding platform? And they can all be filmed in the same day if you know what you're doing and you get everything ready and kind of script ready. So anyway, you need time and you need a bit of budget to get that pre-work done. You then go into crowdfunding, and the crowdfunding platforms will give you advice on pre-work to get ready around how you're going to navigate the comms, not only on the crowdfunding platform, but on things like your social media platforms. There's recommendations around what you should do. We took it a little bit further. We tried different things that other people haven't done. So we did paid advertising specifically targeted at people who had interests in things like angel investments, crowdfunding, and really spent some money, a small amount of money, on paid advertising across social platforms to get more eyeballs. And that did work for us a little bit, but it wasn't something they'd seen anybody else doing before.
Yeah, I've had brands consider that, but it's always interesting to see, can you get an ROI on that?
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about crowdfunding is the accessibility around the amount of money you're asking people to invest. That hurdle's not too great. You're not going out and necessarily asking for 5-10 grand from a crowdfund. You're asking anything upwards of £50. So it's an easier piece to swallow.
It is. And so at the end of it all, like what was the mix on the crowdfunding campaign? Because I'm guessing that you've got many customers, loyal customers who love your brand and want to be part of it. When you did that campaign, what was the split between people who invested, who were customers or people you knew, versus people you'd never come across before that were fresh into the business?
Before we go into that, this is probably my biggest bugbear, but also learning, is we felt slightly missold on the idea that crowdfunding could bring in a network of funds from other people who had used crowdfunding platforms. We felt like perhaps there was a misconception on our part, and perhaps other people feel the same, that when you launch on these crowdfunding platforms, you may pick up a good amount of people that have invested in other things. what we learned quite quickly is that really the majority of your crowdfund comes from your crowd. So your customers, your followers, your engaged audience, your friends and family. And the expectation that you're going to get anything else above and beyond that crowd, that needs to come on a, would be nice to have basis. You need to feel confident you can get to your 100% or overfunded from your crowd. Now, we're this niche, small dry cleaner from Peterborough with circa 5,000 customers in our database. And we were a risk from a crowdfunding perspective in the sense that our crowd was small. Vicky and I, however, knew that we've got 5,000 customers, but they are loyal. They are incredibly loyal. And based on the fact that we provide a service that is the best in the UK rated, we knew that going out to these people and saying, hey, we want to continue and we want to continue growing, doing what we're doing that you're so happy with, we knew they would likely come on that journey with us if we told the right story and, took them with us. So we felt confident we could get there, but it's no mean feat. If you're a small business with a very small crowd, potentially with a product that's a one-time purchase, I think it would be difficult. I think it would be difficult. I'll give you an example, and I won't use the specifics around the company name, but we were talking to another company that was female-funded company that was crowdfunding the exact same time as us. And she had a product, a baby product that was circa 25, 30 quid. And she went out to her crowd, which was bigger than ours, and asked them to support her crowdfund for X amount of money. But because the minimum term was more than the product in which people were buying, which was really a one-time product if you had a new baby, she really struggled to get people to commit to her more than the product she was selling that was a one-time purchase style product. So I think crowdfunding is right for some businesses and much, much more difficult for others. But
I think, for me, what crowdfunding did, I mean, we found it hugely stressful, and it was a massive learning curve. But, hindsight's a great thing. Looking back, there was a lot of people that invested in the business that we wouldn't have been able to bring in if we hadn't had the infrastructure of seeders, because they come in under seeders and then seeders deal with all the admin. So to have 300 shareholders and communicate with them all the time and do all the admin around that, is something, quite frankly, I have enough to do without. So just being able to post on seeders and I'm sure in modern days somebody will sit there and say, well, I could do that, it's just, I just set up a but but from that perspective, it enables a lot of people to get involved. We actually picked up a really good board member who didn't know about us, and he is an ex-CFO, ex-MD, built his own business, sold it, and he's on our board in an advisory capacity, and he came because he saw us on crowdfunding. So there was some real positive. The other thing that was very interesting is because by the time we met the institutional investor, we had investment from the crowd and investment from private individuals. They couldn't negotiate price.
Did they come in on the same round then at the same valuation?
Yeah. Okay. So they said, we would have knocked you down on price. If we'd come to you first, we would have. So I thought that was quite interesting. Yes. But as Claire said, we did feel like it was a lot of work. But then raising money is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, whatever you do. And like you say, the platforms do play a role in that they have a very thorough due diligence process. They're fully regulated. They do all of the admin, the technical side of it. You're right, though. I mean, for many businesses, you end up bringing in 90% of the customer base. I mean, my last business was a fashion tech company where you could design your own shoes. And we were the first fashion brand to crowdfund in the UK quite a long time ago now, 2015. Okay. And we were a reasonably small business, but we had a very affluent customer base. And like you said, they were customers that came back to us regularly because they loved their shoes and would buy a lot. And so part of it was that they just were like, we have to support you, because if you don't provide our shoes, who's going to do that?
Right.
And that was really important. So it is about size, but it's about loyalty, and it's about how affluent they are. And I imagine, again, with the dry cleaning business, the kind of customers you have, those people who are working in the city, needing suits and shirts dry cleaned, are probably going to be at a certain income level, which is helpful.
And, it's the other thing is, they're not the sophisticated investor. They don't understand EIS. They're not people that are going to sort of, but it's kind of, if they are a loyal client, it's really nice for them to feel like they're part of it and they own a bit. And in a way, you're buying their future loyalty as well. Because who are they going to take their business to? They're going to take their business to the company that they own.
Of course they are. And they're going to tell all of their friends about it too.
Yeah. So, it's a very, it's a bit Marmite, I feel.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of crowdfunding. I think there's a lot to be said for it. If you run it well, if you run your campaign professionally, understand what it can and can't do. And as you say, it flushes out some really interesting people. It raises your profile in the investment community, but it's not going to be there to do all the hard work for you. You still got to do the work.
Yeah. And I think it would be a lot easier second time round. If we ever made the decision to do it, we'd go in a lot more aware of where the focus should be and the energy.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about the future. Do you think there will be more fundraising in the future? I mean, tell me more about the, as we bring this interview to a close, is the potential for this business. Where do you plan to take it, Vicky? What's the opportunity to scale? And do you think you will need more funding to get there?
Yeah, I mean, what has been initially the potentially crippling effect on us as a business in terms of COVID and the differences and the work from home culture and, the slow go back to work. I mean, we're now at a higher volume. We're doing higher volumes than we were pre-COVID. And that is because so many dry cleaners have closed. So I'm now on network calls talking to people and they're going, well, we have no dry cleaner in our region. There isn't anybody. They've all closed. So the potential, I feel now, has, what made it incredibly difficult has actually opened up a massive door for us to potentially go regional. Claire and I are absolutely passionate about the customer journey. And until we know we've got that exactly as it should be, then we're not going to do any regional development. At the point that we have that, there will be a board meeting and a decision on what the growth strategy is. And, there's a number. We could license, we could franchise, or we could take it ourselves and build something ourselves. And depending on what that decision is, will depend on whether we need more investment. But we're very clear on what, we understand. We've spoken with an institutional investor. They've told us very clearly what we'd have to achieve to get second round investment from them. And they would come in if we did that, which is encouraging. But yeah, so we're very clear on what we need to do, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. So the goal is clear, but the path to get there will evolve as you learn.
And if somebody came in and there was a trade sale on you've got something here and we want to scale it and we'll buy it from you now, then we would be open to it goes back to how much is enough. Mm-hmm. If the offer was right, then
exactly. Off you trot and go and lie on a hammock in the Maldives and drink cocktails.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think it's brilliant, taking, a very old, established, traditional business, breathing that life into it and thinking really creatively about how you can improve the experience for customers and take it out there. I think your journey is really, really interesting. And as I said at the beginning, this idea of actually buying an established business is something I think not enough people consider, and why not? Because there are businesses that are actually potentially viable, but they just go under because nobody's prepared to take them on. So
yeah, one of the things that's been hugely beneficial for us is having a sound underlying business has meant that all of the money we've raised can go on the growth. So we can potentially take years to do this because we're not going to run out of money, because the underlying business is profitable and self-funding for the business. So, we can accelerate or slow down, but we're never going to get to the stage where we run out of money unless
That's
the
so
underlying
important.
business fails. So it puts us in a very safe and secure place. And we can confidently sort of say, okay, things are changing. We're not quite sure now. Are people going back to trains? Should we just hold back for 6 months and see what's happening with that before we make a decision on a site? We can do that. We're not under any time pressure. So there is definitely something to say for buying a business, turning it around, and then doing something with it.
Yes. And also this piece about having a strong underlying business and focusing on profitability. And I think the market now is really shifting, particularly in the investment world, away from those businesses that are built on growth, with profitability being somewhere in the never. Investors are moving away from that. And I think rightly so. It's leaving quite a lot of businesses in big trouble. Because businesses that raised money on hot air now can't find the follow-on funding, and it is causing a big collapse in the market. But those businesses like yours that are just fundamentally great businesses are the ones that I think can survive. So I think a shining example. We need more businesses like this, and they may not appear super sexy, but you can make them sexy, right, Claire?
Yeah, Claire can make them sexy.
I love it. It's brilliant. I love your story. I can't wait to see where you go next. Please bring some dry cleaning lockers to my town. We all need it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today, and I wish you all the best in the future. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Julia. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thanks for following Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. This content is all provided to you for free, so if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss another one. Enter the Arena has helped hundreds of female founders fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business. Our first-hand experience, expert guidance, and proven programs help female founders unleash the Wonder Woman inside. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.enterthearena.co.uk. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, and I look forward to talking with you soon.